Hi guys, happy summer. Here we are. And I promised you that I would come back and we're going to try and finish our read aloud book. So if you're following along, this is starting on page 400. And when we last left off, that the kids were setting a plan in motion to kind of poison everybody's food. And so I think we left off at the top of page 400 where it said that by tomorrow, most of the students at the Institute would be barfing up their suppers. Those suppers had yet to be eaten, however. It was the end of the school day, not yet supper time, and the uneasy members of the Mysterious Benedict Society were the only children outside in the chill air. The other students were either in their room studying or watching television. But the moment class was dismissed, Sticky had led his friends up here, just over the top of the hill beyond the gym. It was here, on the day they'd encounter Mr. Bloomberg, that Sticky had spotted the patch of wild chuckroot, along with various other plants, whose Latin names he rattled off and the others promptly forgot. "This should be enough," Sticky said, grinding up the last bit of root. He dusted his hands vigorously, then considering what would happen if he absent-mindedly touched his lips, then absent-mindedly licked his lips, Sticky dusted them again. And a few minutes later, when the children were gathered on the hilltop, he dusted them again. "I'm actually starting to feel guilty about this. Can you believe it?" "Maybe it's because you still have a conscience," Rainey said. Kate snorted. "Or maybe it means you're sympathizing too much with the enemy. Personally, I don't feel the least bit guilty for sending a bunch of bullies on an emergency trip to the bathroom." Sticky wiped his hands on his pants. "Don't let your feelings make you too ambitious on this one, Kate. If you overdo the dose, you might actually hurt somebody." "And it isn't just the messengers getting the stuff," Rainey reminded her. "That would be too suspicious. It has to be everybody." Kate rolled her eyes. "Who needs parents when I have you two? Don't worry, I won't kill anyone. And I promise not to enjoy it the tiniest bit if Martina turns green." Guilty or not, they all smiled at that thought. "So let me just review the plan," Constance said. "The other messengers will get sick and won't be able to do their sessions with the Whisper, so you boys will get your turn early. When you get called for your session, Kate and I will sneak away somehow and wait outside the door to the Whispering Gallery. Now, how exactly are we supposed to do that? What if we're in class?" "We haven't worked that out yet," Rainey admitted. "Right," said Constance. "And then one of you will push the button that opens the door, even though the button is on Mr. Curtin's wheelchair. How are you going to manage that?" "We haven't figured out that part either," mumbled Sticky. "I see. And then after all this has been magically accomplished, Kate and I will rush inside, and the four of us together will somehow defeat Mr. Curtin, ruin his whisper, and make our escape unharmed, even though we're on an island and the bridge is guarded by recruiters. Any idea how this is going to happen?" "No," the boys said dejectedly. Kate shrugged. "Okay," Constance said. "I just wanted to make sure I understood the plan." "Anyway, you can't count Milligan out," Rainey said. "He'll be there to help us." Constance threw her hands in the air. "How do you know? You haven't even left the note for him yet." Rainey rubbed his temples. "I'm going right now, Constance, okay?" "Be quick, Rainey," Kate said. "I'll need all three of you to distract the helpers while I doctor up the food." "And how are we supposed to do that?" Constance asked, launching into a tirade about how ill-prepared they were, how little time they had, and how this plan was giving her a worse headache than the hidden message broadcasts did. "So I ask you again," she concluded, "exactly how are we supposed to distract the helpers?" "Just be yourself," said Kate. Rainey left the others arguing on the hilltop and hurried down towards the shore. He had insisted that he be the one to hide the note. Kate would have loved to sneak down to the culvert again, but this was not a clandestine operation. It had to be done in the daylight. Rainey did take a route that made it difficult for him to be seen from the Institute grounds, but if he was spotted, he'd invented a good explanation. In one pocket, Rainey carried a note for Milligan that told him of their plan. In another pocket, he carried a sketch of the island bridge, which Rainey had spent most of 2 class periods working on from memory. He was a fair artist and had felt modestly satisfied with the result until Kate glanced at it after class. "Not good?" he'd asked, seeing her brow wrinkle. "It's okay," Kate had said tentatively, "but the perspective's a little bit off. See, if you just follow the line here and darken those shadows there," and in about 2 minutes, she had produced a much better sketch than his own. Rainey scowled. "I'll take yours," he said grumpily. "Wouldn't want you to have gone through all that trouble for nothing." At the top of the sketch, he'd printed the title, "Your Favorite View." If he was caught, Rainey would say he'd gone to the shore for a better view of the bridge, so as to make the best possible drawing. The drawing, of course, being intended as a present for Mr. Curtin. Hurrying along at the bottom of the incline, just out of the reach of the lapping water, Rainey patted his pockets anxiously. Both pieces of paper were there. Good. Now, don't step into the water, he told himself. Wet shoes might draw suspicion, and make sure the note doesn't stick out when you leave it. Cover it up completely with rocks. Don't leave footprints. It's a miracle footprints didn't sink us the last time. Only poor old SQ spared us that disaster. Rainey found the culvert and marked off 20 paces from it. He looked around. Not a soul to be seen. There was no one on the bridge. The incline concealed him from the rear, and in front of him there was nothing but water, and across it the mainland shore. It occurred to him that Mr. Benedict and his crew were probably watching him through a telescope right now. He stared toward the trees across the channel. No doubt they could see him. The question was whether he would ever again see them. Rainey gave a melancholy little wave, one part hello and one part goodbye, then bent and hid the note beneath the 2 big rocks. Be sure, Rainey reminded himself. Had he stacked the rocks carefully? Had he made sure that the note couldn't be seen? Had he left any footprints in the sand? Satisfied on all counts, he hurried back the way he had come, anxious to put distance between himself and the note. As he left the shore and started up the incline, Rainey considered what to do with the sketch. He didn't think he'd been spotted, but he should save it just in case. If someone confronted him about it later, he would have his excuse in his pocket. Rainey patted his pocket, but the sketch wasn't there. How could it not be there? Hadn't he put it in his left pocket? He reached into his other pocket and he felt the paper. He must have it confused. Or had he? He took out the paper to be sure and then stared at it in disbelief. It was his note. He had left the sketch under the rocks. Now things were getting a little dicey. Kate needed his help, and it was almost time for supper, but they absolutely had to contact Milligan. You can do it, Rainey told himself. You'll just have to run. Rainey ran down the incline, watching his step on the rocks, careful not to get wet, careful not to leave prints. Soon he'd made his way back to the 2 stacked stones. He glanced around quickly. Shore, bridge, water, all clear. Exchanging the note for the sketch, unfolding the note to be certain this time, he put the stones back, checked one last time for footprints, and ran off as fast as he could. 2 minutes later, Rainey was alone on the plaza, breathing very hard. He saw SQ Pedalion appear from behind the Institute control building, but there was no way SQ could have seen him, and there was no one else in view. Rainey wiped his brow. That was a lot of excitement over nothing. He waved to SQ and hurried on, not wanting to get caught up in the conversation. No time for that. The others were waiting. As it happened, SQ was in a hurry too. All day long, he'd been tormented by his mistake. How could he have been so foolish to wipe out the spy's footprints? Such a ridiculous blunder. All day long, he had thought maybe, just maybe, if he were to go back down there and take a closer look. SQ picked up his pace, feeling more eager with every step. He would skip supper and spend the entire hour searching. Wouldn't it be something if he did find the spy's footprints after all? Or some other clue. They had scoured the area pretty carefully before, but you never knew, did you? How wonderful it would be if he could redeem himself in Mr. Curtin's eyes. And so it was, with that longer and longer strides, SQ Pedalion hurried across the plaza and down the incline towards the shore, towards the culvert, towards the place where Rainey, in his anxious hurry, had stacked the two stones just a little less carefully than he'd done the first time, toward the place where one corner of the note stuck out, flickering in the harbor breeze like a tiny white flag of surrender. Oh no, SQ might end up being a hero after all. Rainey was in such a hurry that he checked to make sure no one was around him, and he checked to make sure that he erased his footprints, but a little piece of the note was still sticking out of the stacked stones. So that's where we're going to stop, at the bottom of page 405, so 405, if you're following along. And we will come back to read more next time.